Many of you may not be aware, but October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. Phishing emails, good password management, and how we as humans can sometimes be the greatest vulnerability when it comes to cybersecurity. So we cover that and more today on Conversations with Certrec. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to Conversations with Certrec. I'm Michelle Thomas, and with me today I have Stephen Thomas, our Executive Director of Cyber and Information Technologies. Glad to have you, Stephen. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited you're here. So we're just going to dive right into the questions. The first one we have here is, cybersecurity awareness. That can mean so many things to so many different people. From an IT person's perspective, what does that mean for you?
I think that you have to understand sort of the genesis of cybersecurity awareness. And I think back to Kevin Mitnick. He is the first renowned hacker, phone phreaker with a PH, kind of like you, the phishing thing.
So he started it all?
He's the one that started it all.
Great.
And he wrote a book in the early 2000s, The Art of Deception. And it had to deal with the human element of cybersecurity. And his philosophy from that book was that while security systems continue to evolve from a computer perspective, it is much easier to attack the social engineering side of an organization. So rather than learning how to pick locks and how to have ropes that you dangle down like Mission Impossible, it's much easier to go up to the receptionist, look like you belong, and just walk right in. So cybersecurity awareness to me is training people against that level of vulnerability, that they need to be aware of what exists out there to keep themselves safe. And from the IT perspective, we'll take care of the rest, the complicated stuff.
So it can be many different levels of complication, right? It's the initial, I need to have good passwords, all the way up through all the complex server and IT infrastructure, because I'm not an IT professional. So for me, when I think of cybersecurity awareness, I'm thinking, well, I need to be sure I don't write my passwords down, or I need to make sure I don't give my phone to somebody, but you're suggesting it goes even further with the social side, right? That I need to just be more socially aware instead of just focusing on IT truly.
Well, I think all of those things are important. That is exactly a vector. So you walk into a building, you look like a maintenance person, you look like you belong, and the security password for the computer is right there on the secretary's desk, right? Mm-hmm. So now you have access to a level of things inside of the system that you didn't prior. You walk into a hotel and you have the login for a computer setting right there. You can log in and possibly get all of the credit card information or room numbers of somebody that's important that you might be interested in, maybe capturing their traffic and stealing some information from them. So I think all of those things are important. Having passwords that are not easily broken. So it's probably a bad idea to have your password be your pet's name or your first child's name, right, or something
1, 2, 3,
along those
4
lines. Yeah, password ! That's probably not a good one.
But what I'm also hearing you say is some cybersecurity awareness could really and does really begin with our physical security awareness. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. You keep people physically away from you that are not supposed to be around you. It makes it easier to keep them away from you from a cyber perspective, right? There are complex attacks that are trying to be leveraged against organizations all the time. But still, the easiest way, and again, this harkens back to Kevin's book, is that the easiest way is to get you to give me your password, not to actually go and hack a database with insane passwords inside of it.
So they're looking for the easy targets that aren't protecting themselves.
Exactly. There was an interview with somebody who was doing the Nigerian email scams, where they were trying to, you've received an email from a Nigerian prince, you need to send me money, or I need you to validate your bank account so I can send you money, or whatever the scam was. They said when they came up with these emails, they intentionally misspelled words inside of them. Now, why would you do that?
Yeah.
If somebody is very astute and they're noticing that you're misspelling words, they're going to say, you know what, something doesn't smell right, and they're going to back off. However, you may find some individuals who say, maybe English isn't your first language. Okay, I can give you a pass on that. Those types of individuals had the same mentality that they found was easily exploitable later on down the road to get money from them. And unfortunately, it was people that were, good-hearted and possibly a little bit naive, but they intentionally were targeting the people of that psychology so that they could get that money, those bank accounts.
Interesting. So we hear a lot about emails, right? Like you're talking about now
Sure.
as a really big vulnerability for individuals, for organizations, because we do have good, people that want to think the best of what's coming to them in email. So, we hear that as phishing. There's lots of don't click on your links in your emails kind of mentality out there. So can you tell us some things to look for or a little more information about those emails and other kind of hacking schemes that are out there for an individual person?
Sure. So the first thing is, if you're not expecting an email from somebody and they all of a sudden send you an invoice, that might be a little suspicious.
Right.
There's going to be a link inside of there, a Word document, something like that. That's something that should be raising flags. An easy way to get around some things like that, where you're not expecting an email from someone and you receive one, is to just give them a call.
Right.
A lot of times you'll find that they will say, no, I didn't send you that email, or we've had a compromise inside of our own email server and that email was sent to you from a compromised email, and then you know that it's not safe. Another way is to look at actually who it came from. Now, that will be masked. So when you go to look at the email, it may look like it comes from somebody that you know, but then when you actually look at who it came from, so you mouse over it and kind of see who it came from, it will have some domain that makes no sense to you. Unfortunately, a lot of those domains tend to end in .ru, .cn, which is Russian and Chinese.
So when you're saying domain, you mean like for us, we have @Certrec.com. That's our domain.
Right.
So their example domain could be
at attack.ru.
Okay.
And so if you see something that's coming from a domain like that, it's probably a good indication that something isn't on the up and up. Another thing that you may notice inside of there is there will be links. Okay, I need you to go take care of this, and here's a link to go do that. A lot of times that link will just have text. It will just say, click here. Well, if you mouse over where it says click here, it will have some big O long URL, and it should immediately raise flags. Now, a lot of the people that we work with have good IT organizations, and so they can reach out to the people inside of their organization and say, hey, this really looks suspicious. What do you think? And they will more than likely see that what they were trained to recognize is actually an attack against them.
Right. And some of what we've talked about here at Certrec is if you do get a link that wants, let's say, to take you to Amazon, don't click that link, but actually go to your Amazon account and log in there, right? So we're not clicking through the link, we're validating in our account that, it truly is coming from that account. That's another way to check.
Yeah, I think that they being attackers, have gotten very complex in how they format the emails, so much so that they actually look like they come from an organization like Amazon. So you receive an email from who you think is Amazon.
Right.
It's always saying reset your password. That is an ideal phishing attack. Okay, what's really happening behind the scenes? So why do we tell you to go to Amazon directly? If you go to your browser and go to Amazon.com and you type in your username and password, they will let you know if there's a problem on your account, which, by the way, is a great reason to have two-factor authentication so that you don't have to worry as much about these things. But what the attackers are doing is they'll make it look like it's an Amazon email. You click on the link and you go to a page that they have made look exactly like Amazon, but it's not. It's their website. And what you do there is you log in, and what they are doing is taking your username and password that you log into that site, they store it, and then direct you to Amazon.com and log you in. And so at that point, the attack is complete. They have your username and password, and you're already on Amazon.com, so you don't even know that you were hit with that attack.
So now they've got access to your account, potentially your credit cards, if you use the same password everywhere.
Sure.
The cascading effects of that happening are quite
absolutely.
significant from a cyber perspective.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the phishing emails and the kind of content that, those hackers are putting in there to try to reach those good-hearted folks. So what we really want to know, oops, I clicked the link, or I trusted them and I opened that invoice.
Okay, so here's where it gets tricky. A lot of people think, okay, if I just unplug the computer from the internet, if I just power it down, if I just call somebody right this second, they can stop whatever's happening. That may be true to an extent, right? But not really. So a lot of attacks like you're referencing, especially with downloaded documents, are doing things that are called ransomware, okay? And when you get a ransomware email, when you get an attack that's happening that way, they do something on the network that's called worm. They worm through the local network. And what they're trying to do at that point is they are going to encrypt your drive to where it's unreadable. And it goes through your network to everybody on that network and does the same thing to their drive. So you may have heard over the last few years of some hospitals who had to pay a ransom to get their patients' files back. Or you may have heard some organizations that had to do the same. So what you want to do is immediately call an IT professional and ask them what should happen. They're going to want to see what document it was that you opened. They're going to want to know what attack is starting to happen on their network immediately. Now, they may ask you to unplug your computer from the network. In all honesty, if that attack is going through the network, it's already started. It started within milliseconds of you clicking that link or opening that document.
Wow, it's that fast.
It's that
milliseconds.
fast. Within milliseconds.
Wow.
A computer can operate so much faster than a human can. Even if you were to open it and unplug, it's
still
too
too
late.
late.
It is
Wow.
too late.
Wow, okay.
And so these organizations, again, are trying to train their people to recognize these types of attacks so that they don't have to respond to this, because it can cost millions of dollars to get that back. Essentially what is happening, for anybody out there who's familiar with encryption, the computers on the network are being one-way encrypted, meaning you can't read the information on that computer any longer unless you have the encryption key. Now, that encryption key is being held by those who are actually perpetrating the attack. And what they are wanting you to do is pay them, and they will give you that encryption key, and then all of your data will be restored back to you. So it never actually goes away. It just becomes inaccessible. That's
unfortunate. Wow. But it sounds like emails are a huge vulnerability for cyber and awareness. And so I think, I certainly feel like emails are where I need to really pay attention. And I know our organization, you guys have added that nice comment at the top. It says it's come from outside our organization. Use extra care and caution. I know that's helped us as we've gone through. But just beware of those links. That's what I hear you saying. And any PDFs or any documents we're not expecting, right? Those are some of the key things in your emails to really look out for. So that's a big one.
Absolutely. The human vector is the easiest vector of attack when dealing with a cybersecurity incident in an organization.
Okay, great. So from emails, you mentioned several times about they're after your username and passwords. So what kind of things can folks do to make better passwords, to keep their passwords so they're not writing them at their desk or putting them in their black book of passwords, if you will? Yeah. What are some techniques around passwords people can do to help with that cybersecurity?
So we mentioned earlier not making easy passwords like password exclamation mark, right? You don't want to do that. You also, Michelle mentioned, you don't want to have the same password exist in multiple sites, right? So the same password that you use for Amazon, you don't want to use for your email, that you use for eBay, that you use for Facebook. Any one of those organizations gets compromised, or you get a phishing attack where you accidentally fall prey to this, That password for all of those sites now is out in the open. So it needs to be a unique password per site. Now, how do people manage this? How do they deal with
Yeah,
this?
that's a lot of passwords.
That's a
I'm
lot of
thinking
passwords.
that's not even work, right? Those are all
Exactly.
personal.
Yeah, think about your bank.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Walmart and go shopping. You like we said before, you've got your Amazon password. You've got Facebook. Maybe you've got a Twitter account, an Instagram. So all of these accounts should have unique separate passwords, and you need to keep track of those through some method that's not writing it down on your computer, writing it down on a piece of paper that you store in front of your keyboard, right? One, you're going to mistype it, right? It's just inconvenient. But two, it's super easy for somebody to find and have access to all of your things. So what we recommend is that you use some sort of a password manager. Now, that password manager, it's a program that you can store both your username and your password inside of the program itself, and you can usually sync that across multiple devices. So you can have it for your phone, you can have it on your computer at home, your computer at work, should your IT organization allow for you to install it. And you can have that password manager also generate unique passwords for each site. So you don't have to sit and think about some way that you can make the password secure. They have parameters you can put in. And usually a site will also have parameters. So they'll say the password needs to be a minimum of 8 characters, and it needs to have uppercase, lowercase, a number, and some sort of a symbol. So a minimum of 8 up to 16. You can go inside of your password manager software and say, I want it to be 16 characters long. I need it to have all of these things. Generate me a password randomly.
So it'll give you don't have to think of a password.
Exactly.
It automatically gives it to you.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
As a matter of fact, I myself am in a point where if someone were to put a gun to my head and ask me for a password to Amazon, I could not provide that to them.
Because it's randomly generated. You have no idea what it is.
I have no idea what it is.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And you use this password manager system, you said across all devices, so it can be synced to be on my phone, on my tablet, my work computer, so I have the same passwords everywhere?
Absolutely. And you want it to be encrypted, so should somebody get their hands on your password manager, they don't have access to your world right away, right?
And so earlier you mentioned too, we've got complex passwords, right? So we want to have upper, lower, symbols, all those fun things. But you mentioned earlier two-factor authentication. Can you explain what exactly two-factor authentication is, and should I use it all the time? Should I not? If they offer it, what are we talking about?
I think it matters first what site you're talking about. Okay. I don't think that all sites should need two-factor authentication. If you have a site that you wrote at home that you want to log in and keep your cooking recipes, probably not that big of a deal to do two-factor authentication.
I mean, I am proud of my cooking recipes, so...
If your family recipes get out in the open, I'm sure someone will be upset about that.
We'll probably survive.
Yeah, but we'll be okay. However, there are sites that you need to have two-factor authentication enabled on. And what is two-factor authentication? Two-factor authentication is where when you try to go log into a site, it has some other means of contacting you to make sure that you are who you say you are. Now, originally, a lot of sites enabled this by using SMS, which is text messaging.
Okay.
So what would happen is you would try to go log on to the site, and they would send you a text message code, and then you would punch in that code, and they would say, okay, we know that this is you.
Okay.
Since it became so prevalent, a lot of attackers started using what is called SMS hijacking. So basically, they try to intercept that message as it comes to you and then put in the code and pretend to be you. So another way that is actually the more preferred way at this point is by using an authenticator app. And what that authenticator app does is it uses a unique code and generates codes that rotate every 6 seconds. Now, some organizations have these where they give you a fob and it rotates.
A lot of banks use the fob.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the same thing, except it's installed on your phone. So you go try to log into a site. It's going to say, well, what is your authenticator code for this site? And then you can pull up your app, look at it, and punch in the 6 digits for that. Okay. And of course, they have methods if you were to lose your phone or whatever, you can get all of that information back and still have access to your accounts. So you don't lose it, but it is another layer of security there to make sure you are who you say you are.
So just in case somebody gets my password, if I have two-factor authentication enabled on my bank, let's say, that's just another way they have to now get two things from me through hijacking or whatever the way is to get into my bank instead of just one layer, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. So that's great information. Passwords are, we see lots of different things with them written down. I myself also use a password manager system similar to what you're talking about, and it's really helped me stay organized, stay on top of my passwords, and it helps me feel better about them, right? I'm not as worried out there. We've done Certrec trainings on your passwords and password management because it's a big vulnerability. So what other kinds of things is Certrec doing, and what have you taught our organization in regards to cybersecurity awareness?
Sure. So first off, you're absolutely right. We do training once per month here at Certrec to recognize cybersecurity. So it's not just an October thing for us. Every single month we're trying to train people because, as I said before, the human element is the weakest element in any sort of attack that could happen. In addition to that, though, we have put in a lot of things in place to make sure that the data stays secure for our customers. For example, we've went and obtained our ISO 27001 certification, which ensures that we're following the best practices for cybersecurity, and it's internationally recognized. Also, we went and obtained our SOC 2 Type 2 report, which is the old SSAE 16, for those who may be familiar with that. Again, making sure that we're meeting all of the requirements for data storage and for password management inside of our systems. Now, what we do in addition to all of this, we also have all of the data that's on our systems encrypted at rest. So if someone were to physically walk into our server room and cut the cameras and pull a whole Mission Impossible thing and pull the hard drives out of there and take those servers home, okay, and try to fire them up and get your data, they can't. It's just like the ransomware attack where you have to have that password to unlock it all. That's what we do on our side to make sure that it can't be unlocked should somebody do that. So everything that everybody does on our system, encrypted at rest. Also, we have the passwords encrypted one way. So we don't even have access to our customers' passwords, which is a vulnerability. If an organization does what's known as two-way encryption, it's easy to unencrypt and find what your customers' passwords are. And as we stated before, a lot of people use the same password on multiple sites. So if you have their password for one, more than likely you've got their password for somebody somewhere else. Now, should your organization come under attack and those passwords get out in the open, the person didn't even have to click something. They could have been the most cybersecure aware person in the world, and their password is out there. So we make sure that that can't happen.
Right.
If someone were to steal our passwords, they wouldn't be able to access them. It's just this long string of gobbledygook that nobody can understand. So
Interesting. So it sounds like to me in all of this, cybersecurity in and of itself is a lot of layers. It requires a lot of layers. We're kind of like ogres. We have layers,
a
if you
parfait.
will. A
Everybody
parfait.
loves a parfait.
Yeah, we're onions, layers, right? Little Shrek reference for you folks out there. But cybersecurity, it requires a lot of layers of protection from both an IT infrastructure and from, as you said, the human factor. We, the humans, need to understand all the vulnerabilities for cybersecurity, and just having that heightened awareness and understanding that we're the vulnerability, I think is a big message that I've certainly learned today. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with the folks about cybersecurity awareness and how they can protect themselves?
I think that we've covered a lot of the bases here. I think that the important message is exactly what you hit on. It's what we do out there every single day as employees, as citizens on the internet. What we do dictates our experience. And if we are careless and reckless, it is not going to be fun. So we have to be careful, we have to be cognizant, and we have to pay attention to what's happening out there in the world around us so that we can protect ourselves.
Thank you. Well, folks, that pretty much wraps it up for us today with Conversations with Certrec. Thank you, Stephen, very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here with us. We certainly learned a lot today about phishing emails and password management and how we as citizens are one of the greatest vulnerabilities when it comes to cyber awareness. We certainly appreciate you joining us today, and please be sure to check back in with us for more Conversations with Certrec as we continue to empower those who power the world. Have a great day.